The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from Southern California. It is Monday. I'm trying to see what date it is. It is the 22nd of 2021. So it's a lot of twos in the in the date today. We are live this morning for a full hour with you talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. So excited to be here with you to bring that to you. It's warm in my room today. I don't know why. Spring is in the air here in Los Angeles, and it's great, although I know that monsoons are coming. But for the moment, it feels, this is my favorite time of the year to live in Los Angeles because you guys are shoveling in different places around the world, or you're, way south of the equator and it's hot where you are because you're in summer. And in Los Angeles, it is the perfect spring with things blooming, which means that there's a little bit of, I'm going to be sneezing. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, a little bit of that. I beg your pardon. And I didn't even use my shoulder. I'm in here alone. So I will make sure that I mop everything down. But so happy and thrilled to be here with you and have this opportunity. You know that I like to start out by telling you that we're live, we're interactive. We want to hear from you. Right now, we are live on the big four. That is YouTube, Facebook Live, Periscope, and Twitter. You can be watching us live right there, but we're also live on a bunch of other sites as well. Traven is showing them to you on the screen, but you know where you're watching from. Now, if you're watching from the big four, it's super easy. All you have to do is write into the chat and it directly aggregates and shows up here on our screen. If you're watching live someplace else, you may look at that, Africa TV and Vaughn Live. Thrilled that you guys are watching us. Good morning, Amanda. Amanda's watching D Live. I love there. Happy Monday to Amanda and her blue hearts. We absolutely love it when we see your blue hearts because it means you're in the house, right? Yes, that was actually the Humpty. My attempt at a Humpty. Okay, Josephine, good morning to you as well. So thrilled that you're here. So we love to hear from you. Now, if you're watching on a platform that doesn't directly aggregate, or you're watching us when we're recorded, because we're a podcast on all major podcast servers. In fact, I think we're on ones that aren't major. In fact, if you find that we're not where you get your podcast, please let us know because we'd like to be there. We very, very much want to be on as many screens as possible, free to you as often as possible. So please keep us posted on that. Traven, our fabulous producer, is so incredible. And if you tell him a place where you watch your podcast, he'll chase it down and get us there. He's really good that way. Oh my gosh, Josephine says she has 3 autistic grandsons. Congratulations, Josephine. That t-shirt that they make for a lot of people who have autism strong in their family, they say, if you think my hands are full, you should see my heart, right? So I'm sure that you've got full hands and a full heart, Josephine. Please write in and tell us if there's any question that you have, which leads me to my next thing, that normally on the show, we have tons of experts. And those of you who tuned in last week, you know what we had scheduled was that Bonnie Yates was going to be here and she was going to do a whole masterclass on filing due process, again, by yourself without a lawyer. And we're still going to do that, just not today. And I apologize to you for that. And Bonnie apologizes, but she has, she needed to be, I don't know whether it was in court or mediation, but she needed to be someplace for a client. And you know how that is. That has to come first. So Bonnie hopefully will be with us next week and we will do that. but not here today. But we have lots of experts that are always here on the show. I do like to remind you that I am not one of them. I am someone who's been hosting shows from a journalistic point of view and interviewing people about autism for, just like more than a decade now. So I like to say that I have an informed opinion, but that is what it is. I'm not an expert, but if you're interested in my opinions about things, you are happy to write in, and you're stuck with me today. So we're going to talk about a whole host of things, but I'm really interested in getting your questions today. But remember, it's just my informed opinion. What are my credentials to be here? There, like a lot of you, I am the mother of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. And my son is 17.5 now. He's about to be 18. And I'm freaking out, folks, totally freaking out, but for all the right reasons. In fact, last night I was on the phone with a dear friend, and they were saying, if somebody had told you at any point that you would be where you are today, I said I would have fallen to the floor on my knees and wept and cried and been so grateful. And don't kid yourself, sometimes I do. We have so many other things to do. It's not my, every minute of every day. But my son is graduating from high school in just a couple of months. He's applied to 13 colleges. And for those of you who keeping score, we've only gotten 3 letters so far, and they've all been acceptances. So the game is on. The game is afoot, as they say. We still have 10 colleges to hear from, and then decisions will be made. Can you even imagine? And further, I want to say, for those of you who don't know my story, my son was considered nonverbal. He could still utter sounds, and there were probably 3 words that he would still say, but they weren't for communication. Like, he would just sit in a corner and say dog, 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 dog for 3 hours with no pause, but he wasn't talking about a dog. He wasn't pointing to a dog. He didn't want a dog. It was just a perseveration that he would make. But still, that's a really good sign, because it means that he had the ability to vocally, and even in those early days when they would say to me, he's going to speak. And I would say, how do you know? How do you know? And they would say, because he's uttering sounds and we can shape that into language. And they did. And, it continued to be a problem for him to express his thoughts through writing, because handwriting was an issue, but also expressing his thoughts through writing seemed like that was going to be a problem. And my son has been accepted to a very prestigious program for playwriting and screenwriting, because he has become a very prolific writer. So all things in this universe, like I would never have guessed that, but okay. Okay, so this is the space from which I come to you, having been on that journey. It is not your journey. It is not anybody else's journey, just like your journey is not like anybody else's. So you know what I say, we hold hands, right? Si se puede, we can do this together. But please don't think that that I ever think that my experience is your experience. I'm very respectful of the fact that we all have our own journeys, and our kiddos and we have our own journeys, which brings me to my last point before we get into the jargon. We do this show on Autism Live, and our whole mission is to provide information and inspiration to the larger autism community. And what do I mean when I say that? That has to start with individuals who are on the spectrum. It has to start with the love and the respect and the listening of those individuals. And I'm very serious about that. That is the place from which we have to stem. But I also then include everyone who loves those individuals, because I know together we can help to fight the good fight to make sure that those individuals have the respect, the employment, the right to love who they love, the right to wear what they want to wear, all the things in life that will make them happy. Not necessarily us, but will make them happy. And anybody who's on that team, I welcome you to this conversation, to be here with our viewers who are on the spectrum, so that we can help to make sure that we support and give them the dignity and the right that they deserve. So thrilled that we get an opportunity. I feel privileged that we get to do that, but always want to be mindful of the respect of who and why, what is the core of our purpose here. Yes. Okay. Having said that, it is time for the jargon of the day. So every Monday and Thursday anyway, we like to give you a term, and then we give you the actual meaning of the term, and then I make fun of it whenever possible, because really there's nothing else you can do with it, right? So then we give you the working definition, and I try to put it into context for you so that you'll have a beginning understanding of it. But it's really just about having a beginning understanding of it, because these jargon terms are so overwhelming sometimes, right? But when you do start to understand them, they will save you time, energy, money, and get you to progress faster. And that's the reason why we go through this. Saying good morning to our journey, Cameron's new life. And also saying good morning to Nasser. Excuse me. So let's take a look at today's jargon term. It's one of my favorites, intraverbal. And if you had said to me 16 years ago that someday I would be sitting and talking on camera and saying intraverbal, it's one of my favorite jargon terms, I would have asked to take your temperature. I would have been convinced that you had lost your mind, because I didn't know what an intraverbal was and had no desire to be talking about it on camera. But here we are, and I'm happy that we're here, because when life gives you lemons, make the best lemonade, right? And intraverbals help you to make the best lemonade. So let's take a look at what our actual definition of intraverbal is. Let's see what we can poke fun of here, shall we? Intraverbal, an elementary verbal operant. Don't you just love it when they call something a verbal operant? An elementary verbal operant involving a response that is evoked by a verbal discriminative stimulus that does not have point-to-point correspondence with that verbal stimulus. Ladies and gentlemen, that clears it all up for all of us, doesn't it? Like, I don't know about you, but I could write a term paper on this right now, having read that definition. Not. Right? If you don't know what an intraverbal is, you probably don't know what a verbal operant is. You probably don't know what a discriminative stimulus is. And what the heck is a point-to-point correspondence with a verbal stimulus? Nah. This is a crazy person's definition. It's actually an expert, egghead, person who likes jargon definition. So not helpful to us who don't have degrees in psychology. Let's look at what the working definition is, because I'm guaranteeing you this is something really important. Intraverbal is something somebody says in response to the language of another person. It's conversational language. So we've been very slowly, sneakily doing the verbal operants with you, right? So we did a coex a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the fact that, I say something and you echo it, right? That's echoics. We talked about manding, which is that I request something. And remember, these are not necessarily all vocal, because I need to do vocal to do a coex, but for manding, I can point. And I can point to the water, and then you know that I want the water. Then last week, we talked about tacting. The tacting is when I notice something in the environment and I label it for the purpose of letting you know, so that we create a triangle of information. That I say balloon, because I want you to look at the balloon and I want us to experience the balloon together. That's tacting. And tacting is important because a lot of times what you guys will write into me and you'll say, well, my child is getting speech from a speech and language pathologist, but I don't know why. My child is 11 and we haven't gotten to conversation. My child has like 300 words they can label and say, but what's the mystery? How do I get to conversation? Voila, it's the verbal operants. So because we want to get all of these in place, because when we have them in place, we are going to get to intraverbals. If we know how to mand and request things that we want, if we are tacting on our own, then we are ready to move on to intraverbals. And there are other skills that we have to build before we get to intraverbals, but an intraverbal is that I've taught you what an apple is. I showed you, and I expressively and receptively, I showed it to you in 2 dimensions. I showed you an actual apple. I showed you many different kinds of apples so that you would generalize what an apple is, right? So you firmly have apple in your mind, and then I put an apple someplace like on top of your iPad and you signed or you gestured or whatever, you pointed to a card or you said out loud apple without me prompting you, right? So now we get to interverbals where I can say to you, what do you want for lunch? Which doesn't, and I'm not pointing to an apple. I don't have an apple with me. There's, no apple. I'm not holding up a picture of an apple, but I say, what do you want for lunch? And a pure interverbal is that you say apple. So that's why it said no point-to-point correspondence. So you were able to go through the files in your mind and think about what do I want for lunch? And you were able to say apple. Now, how do you get there? How do you get to the point where somebody can do an interverbal? Well, first you got to prompt it, right? So I teach you apple and I teach it in all the ways that we just talked about, right? And I put the apple on my head so that you go apple, right? So that it's out of the ordinary to get you to tact. I put it on your computer so that you're tacting it, right? And I show you different color apples. And then I say to you, what do you want for lunch? And I might, hold up two pictures, one of an apple and one of a banana, and let you pick, right? And when you pick, then I say, what is it? And you say, apple. Great, you get an apple for lunch, right? We turned it into a mand, right? But the question was still there. And I'm going to build that skill in you so that eventually when I say, what do you want for lunch? And I might open the refrigerator to refresh your memory, still not pure interverbal, but eventually I'm going to say to you, what do you want for lunch? And if apples are really the thing you like, you're going to say apple, right? And then from there, I'm going to build in other questions so that we just keep adding, just like when we added the mand. In the beginning, the child says cookie. Well, really, in the beginning, the child says good, right? But they're pointing at the cookie. We give them the cookie. Then they say k, right? And we give them the cookie. And then we say cookie, right? You get cookie. And now, so keep moving the goalpost, right? Then when we get cookie, then we start saying more cookie or want cookie. And then I want cookie. And then I want cookie, please, right? And so that we're building the sentence. It's always like the pizza dough. We're taking it and we're stretching it. And we always are going to get a little bit of shrink back, but then we stretch it further and it goes out further. Right? Same thing with getting to the interverbal. We want to get to the conversation. Now, if you're curious as to, you're like, okay, this is all fascinating and I've never heard this before and I didn't know that's how you taught that. How can I learn more? I want to give you two resources. One of them, and the people from these resources are going to be on the show on Thursday. It's something we talk about endlessly on the show. There's two products that you have access to, that everybody who has the internet has access to. One of them is IBT, which is the Institute for Behavioral Training. So they teach the how. Like, how do you teach these things? So you can find them at ibehavioraltraining.com. If you go there, you'll see that it's a website and there's 3 different categories of trainings that they do. Thank you, Traven, for putting it up there. There's 3 different trainings that segments. So it's like know your audience. So they have a segment that's just for professionals. So people who are already working in the field of ABA, they can do their continuing education credits there, right? And learn more about things. It's going to be jargon intensive there. Then there's a category that's just for educators, for teachers, and the topics are about, how to set your classroom up, how to deal with fire drills with individuals on the autism spectrum, right? And then there's a third category that's just for parents. And it means that it's a lot of the same topics, but the jargon has been thinned down and it's experts explaining it with the expectation that you don't, like I'm doing here, you don't have a degree in psychology. Here's the great news, is you can do any of them that you want. If you're a really motivated parent and you're like, I've been watching the jargon for a couple of years, Shannon, I got the jargon, I'd like some more jargon. I want to know what the experts know, then feel free to order the ones in the expert column. Or if you want to be able to help and support your teacher and you just think that they don't have the time to watch the video, but you want to give them suggestions, go watch the teacher ones, right? They don't close you. You don't have to have a BCBA to take the expert ones, is what I'm saying. You don't have to give a teacher credential to prove that you want to take the teacher ones. So all that's available. What are they? It's not a pamphlet. What it is a video. They're different lengths. They're different times, and they sell them by the module. So you might go in and say, I want to do the module on teaching language. Now, they range in price. I think that the least expensive one is $7.50. And I believe, don't quote me, but I think the most expensive one is $32. So they're in the neighborhood of what it would cost to get a book to read. But who has time to read books while you're doing intervention? So what you do is you watch the video and you can rewatch it. When you buy it, you get it for a certain number of months, and you get to choose how many months you want it for. Every week we feature on the show, they offer free things. And so I encourage you to go there, try the free thing for this week in the educator or the parent column. And Traven, do you have their phone number that you can pop up real quick? Because that's the way that you're going to reach them to get the free stuff. But I really highly encourage you. These are great things to do. Traven's got the phone number right there, 877-975-4559. Just call them and say, I was watching Autism Live. Can I get the free training for the parents or the teachers this week? And they'll help you out with that. Now, the other thing that now Skills and IBT, they were together at one point, then they were separate entities. Now they're back together again. So Skills is this amazing resource, and it gives you the actual lessons and helps you to build them in an order. You can customize them, but it says, here's the order that we've put them in after years and years of experience. The Skills curriculum is the curriculum that my son had when he was going through treatment with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So it's so much more than a curriculum. Other people will say to me, oh, well, I'm doing VB MAP. Right. The thing about Skills is that it does what a bunch of other products do. So it assesses your child. You have to answer questions, but it's assessing your child. It gives you treatment recommendations, a pool of lessons that are appropriate for your child. It also gives you the ability to build a behavior intervention plan. And there's nothing else that does that. And then it tracks your child's progress. So the two together are great. The Skills is a subscription base, so there's a monthly cost for it. But if you call that number, they will give you 10% off of that monthly if you just say that you watched about it on Autism Live. So there you go. And so if you want to learn more about these things and how to do them, you absolutely can. And they're going to be with us on Thursday because we talk about them so much. We were like, let's get them on the show. So moving on, we always have a question of the day. And our question today, what new skill have you acquired since COVID? And I'm so terribly interested to hear this because, we're almost a year in. And for those of you in Italy, you are a year in, right? I want to know, what have you learned? Some of you I know are probably baking sourdough bread. I did not pick up that skill. I have a ukulele that I intended to learn how to play. I think I know one chord and not well, but there are many other things that I have learned how to do since COVID, a lot of them having to do with gardening. But I'm interested to, one of the most fun things that I learned how to do is I learned how to put together one of those puzzle lamps, which is no small thing. It took me 2 months to be able to do it. And now I don't know if I'll remember how to do it, but there are these little pieces of plastic and then you have to fit them together and it makes a ball. Super duper fun. So that's what I learned how to do in COVID. So what have you guys learned how to do? Somebody said I learned who my true supporters are. Yeah. We got a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to get to those in just a second. So write in and tell us what new skill you learned in COVID. I have acquired a diving coach license. Well, that's so fascinating. Congratulations. That's wonderful. I never did learn how to dive. Diving is a thing that has evaded me. So that's so cool that you know how to do that. That is spectacular. Who else learned a new skill in COVID? Hopefully in a year you learned something. Think about it. I'm learning how to structure my day because I don't really know how to do that. I'm just being honest. Okay, we also have a topic for this week. Let's move on to what the topic of the week is, but please send in what you learned. But this is one of my favorite topics, because this to me is at least half the battle, right? Is asking the right questions. I recently was talking to somebody about, I'm really hot on this new old thing that I knew about once upon a time and talked about once upon a time on the show and stopped talking about it. Every single state in the United States has a 211, either a phone number or a website or both. So you can pick up your house phone and dial 211 and you connect, or you go to a website and put in 211 in your state and you will find a website. And it's a website just with resources for everything. Oh, somebody else says I accomplished teaching skills. Wonderful. Congratulations. But on the 211 site, it gives you a host of things that are helpful and supportive. Like there's a tab on most of them that says rent assistance, or food assistance, or all kinds of things, right? Social worker help. And I just want to encourage everybody to check that out. Now, there was somebody who called me and said, we're struggling, and I don't know how we're going to get through the next couple of months for various and sundry reasons. And I said, okay, so let's find your 211 site and go to it. I won't be able to call for you, but click on the rent assistance, call them. And they called. And then I checked back with them the next day. I said, what did they say? Did they have any resources for you? And they said, no, they said that they don't do that for the city that I live in. And I said, oh, okay. So did you ask them what the phone number is for the one? She said, oh, no, I just assumed that they just don't offer that for where I live. And I said, no, I think that probably means that it's a different phone number, but ask them if they know. And here's the other trick. If they don't know, ask them to talk to the manager and ask if anybody knows where the phone number is. And if they don't know that, ask them, do you have any idea how I would find out who would have the phone number? And they were like, oh, okay, I didn't realize I had to be that explicit. And I said, in this world, in this time, that is what you need to do to get things done. You got to keep asking and refining the question. I am a crazy person about this because I'll ask a question. I do this all the time with my poor beleaguered husband. I'll ask him a question and he gives me an answer to which I say, that is wonderful, but that is not the question that I asked. The question that I asked was, like, for instance, I'll say, are we out of eggs? And he'll say, well, we ordered them last week. Thank you. That is wonderful. Thrilled for the information, but that doesn't tell me if we are now out of them. You see what I mean? And I find that I do that a lot everywhere I go. I'll ask a question and people give me an answer that they think that they've answered my question, but they really haven't. And sometimes it means you got to ask the question in a different way. Because I don't know whether it's just this generation or that we are all so Netflixed out, but sometimes there's misunderstandings and we can't have misunderstandings when it's important. So figuring out the right question and knowing the right question to ask. One of my favorite things about Autism Live being live and that we have this interactive chat, which I'm about to get to, is that sometimes you guys will ask a question. And you're just asking the question for you and for your family and for yourself. But everybody else gets to hear that question. And we've learned really early on when we started doing Autism Live that sometimes people go, wait a second, somebody just asked about that. I didn't even know that that was a thing. I'm having that too. I didn't even know that I could ask a question about that. And now suddenly people know, oh, I can ask a question about that. That's a thing. And everybody learns. So remember that when you ask a question, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping other people as well, which I super duper love. So as I stated, our intent was to have Bonnie Yates on today, and she is unavailable because she has a court thing. So you're stuck with me. That's okay, because I love being here with you guys, and I love looking at your questions. So our journey said we would love conversations. And I want to say this with great love to you. And they said, have lots of Manding working on telling me what he sees and is getting better now, working on hear and have. What's next? So I just want to tell you it's working. Because the things that you have said here and other places, what you're doing is working. So you've got the Manding, now you're working on the Tacting. And so stay the course and follow along, because I know that you have really good supervision. But now you have to relax. And I know it's like impossible because we all want to be at the finishing line. And if somebody could have told me when my son was 6 that we would be here, I could have relaxed, right? And everybody would tell me things and I wouldn't believe them. But you've got the Manding, you've got the Tacting, which means if you continue on, there's no reason to think that you won't get to the Intraverbals. But it takes time, because when our kids are late to speech, part of what happens, and my understanding from talking to experts and lengthy conversations with Temple Grandin, is that our brain has a filing system. But until we have language, the filing system is not efficient. Because we don't we have a memory when we're like 2, and we don't have language to classify it. Like maybe you have a memory of when you were 2 when a dog tried to bite you. But your brain doesn't know bite and it doesn't know dog. It doesn't even know the word fear. So it just stores it in a place, but it doesn't file it under anything. So when you're 5, let's say, typical development, you would learn the word dog around 2. So maybe you would file it, and maybe you would misfile it under dog and now be afraid of all dogs, right? But if you don't have language until you're 5, then all of those files are there and they're not filed. So a memory will come up, but it's not always when it's useful, right? But you can't just call something up to mind. Temple does a whole TED talk about how she calls things up in her mind, and that when somebody says hat, she gets like an Amazon page that has all, like a Google image page that's all these hats. And then, she has to narrow it down from there. So it takes her a little bit longer to process because her visual cortex is ginormous. They've even done scans of it. It's ginormous. And she's filtering through a whole bunch of stuff. So it's not that she's not thinking. She's just filtering through all of her files. But before she had language, and when someone doesn't have language, it takes that much longer because you can't just call the file up. You know that movie, is it Inside Out? And the little girl has the memories and their little blobs, and they go into her mind and they've got rack after rack. That's kind of, what we think the brain is like, but they're classified like joy is over here and angry memories are over here. So right now he's building files and he's getting, the synapses are learning to go to those files. But until he has those things firmly in their files, the Intraverbals are going to be harder for him because he's got to pull those things up. So it's like a computer system and you're building, is it the RAM? That's the memory. So you're building that up. Stay the course, keep doing what you're doing, and be excited because it's coming. Have they started working on WH questions with him yet? You're working on hear and have. But if they start working on the WH questions with him, write and tell me. And somebody said they learned, the skill they've learned is to be better about asking for help. That's great. He cries when things stop or get put in a bag. He says goodbye. It's hard to help him understand it's not gone. Yeah, well, because at some point something did go away. Right? Whatever it was, maybe you put something in the trash and it went away. Okay, so you're not yet working on the WH questions. So that would be something that I would talk to your ABA team about and say, hey, can we start working on the WH questions? Are we there? And they might say to you, we're not quite there yet. And listen to them, but soon I think you will get to the WH questions. And that's going to help you to get to that more conversational thing. But the more he does that you put something in a bag, I'll be honest with you, that's in the cognition curriculum. It's object permanence. And you're going to start working on that sometime soon too, where you're going to work on, when you get to prepositions in language, you work on object permanence too. So they're going to take one of his stuffed animals and they're going to stick it in the bag or in the box and say, where is the dog? And they'll teach him to say it's inside, and then they'll teach him to say open if he doesn't already know open, and we take the dog out. And then we set the dog next to the box and we say, where is the dog? The dog is next to or beside the box. And then they'll take the dog and they'll stick it behind the box and they'll say, where is the dog? The dog is behind the box, right? Favorite thing, Dr. Seuss, although it's under the name Ted Geisel, the book Go Dog Go, it's all prepositions. If you're teaching prepositions, that's the best book because it shows the dogs in, on, over, above. It's all the prepositions, and prepositions is one of the hard things. We're working on how does he feel? Great. If the TV goes off, he says goodbye and cries. You know what? Let him have his feelings. If he's sad about the TV going off, label it for him and go, yes, you're sad because the TV is off. And then let's go do something else. Yep, you're sad. Yep, bye-bye. Oh, sad, the TV is off. Yes. Let's go, play this, or let's go get a cookie, or don't make it always food, right? Because then we'll get into other problems. But acknowledge the feeling, and that it's okay. Yep, we feel sad when the TV goes off. I'm sad when I have to turn the TV off and go to bed, and I'm 58 years old. So it's okay, but let him have his feelings. He's entitled to feel sad about it if he wants to. But he'll learn over time. Eventually, they'll get to the lesson where they teach him, is it sad, like the same sad as if your dog got hit by a car? No, it's like a one sad. And that there are 3 sads, and there are 7 sads, and there are 10 sads, and they are not the same. But that's a more advanced lesson that they will get to. But first he needs to learn, oh, yep, what you're feeling right now is sad. Yep, it's sad that the TV is off. But we don't like then lay in it. We go, yes, sad. You're sad right now. And then we go do something else. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked, would this work for students who are getting a master's degree in special education? I'm assuming that you're talking about the IBT. It won't help you to get a master's degree in special education. But it will, in terms of getting the degree, but it will help you with what you're studying. So yes, I think that's what you're asking. I think it's helpful to anybody, really, the IBT training, but it won't get you your degree. But if you are someone who's a clinician, you'll need continuing education credits, but they're not special education continuing education credits. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, hello, Shannon. I'm currently thinking of switching ABA providers. Can I, as a parent, get all of his records from the company, or we are leaving? You should be absolutely entitled to that. Either way, you should be entitled to that. But if you paid through insurance, you're allowed to always request and get your records. I would give them a period of time, because especially in COVID, it's very hard to access records and then send them, especially if they're hard copies. It would be quicker to get the digital ones, but everything is so wonky from COVID. Be patient, but ask for them, and you absolutely should be given them. No questions asked. They should belong to you. Looking to see what else somebody has written in. So somebody said, Shannon, you need to do a segment about advocating for ourselves. Well, we may have time for that today, depending on what people wrote in, because we don't have Bonnie today. Carrie Magro is a godsend for issues like that. Listen to his advice. Yes, we love Carrie Magro. Carrie Magro is a wonderful speaker, identifies himself as being someone who was diagnosed on the spectrum as a child, and he is truly an amazing, amazing speaker. He has his own, you can go to his website, and he has his own Facebook, and he has his own charity, KMR. No, that's something else entirely. It's something KLM maybe. That is, he gives scholarships to people on the spectrum going to college, in fact. I don't know, when you said it's cool that he is expecting anything, I think it's awesome. Oh, I see what you mean. So the fact that that your child knows that something else is coming is really cool. What about behavior issues of a child? Is there some tools that can be helpful? Yes. And that thing that I talked about in skills, it's called a BIP builder. That's really what you want for behavior issues. So remember that ABA says we're going to increase skills that we want to see more of and decrease skills that are preventing us from all the things that we want to do and be successful in our lives. So skills offers you the curriculum to be able to teach things, and the BIP builder to be able to reduce behaviors that are unwanted. And the steps for that are that first, normally in the outside world, you would want to have, and I always encourage you to do this, to have an expert do an FBA, which is a functional behavior assessment. You may not have access to that. That might be you live in a place, or you don't have the insurance funding, and you're like, or it's going to take 6 months. So the skills program has what they call the CIFA, which is the next best thing. It is not the same as, but it's the next best thing, and studies have shown that it's very effective. I want to be clear, not as effective as if you had an FBA from an expert. I want to be very clear about that. But if you don't have access to that, you do the CIFA, the Card Indirect Functional Assessment, and it asks you a bunch of questions about the behavior. So let's say your child is kicking, and it'll say, it doesn't know what the behavior is. You type in kicking, right? And it has a drop-down menu that you can pick. Boy, and that's a real fun drop-down menu. It lists like everything that they could think of, but there's even a place to put something if they haven't thought of something, but you put kicking. And then it asks you a bunch of questions. It says, does this behavior happen even when no one's in the room? And it'll just go through a whole bunch of questions. And then once it's done with the questions, and each thing has a different number of questions based on what you answer, then it says, okay, here is what we think the function of the behavior is based on the answers that you gave us. And it'll say it's 15% attention, it's 45% escape, and it's 10% automatic reinforcing. And then it gives you strategies, and it says, here's the things that'll work. And then you go to a BIP builder, which BIP has several different elements to it. And one of them is that it's basically that 3-term contingency. So it says, here's an antecedent modification, what you do before the behavior happens. So if your child is kicking only when it's bedtime, right, that we think of something to do at bedtime that, prevents the kicking. Or gets it out of his system, depending on what we found the function of the behavior was. But it's something to do before the kicking normally happens. And then they have a consequence strategy of what to do when all else has failed and it has happened. But my favorite part is that it also gives you, built into the BIP builder, it says, what is the replacement behavior? Because we know that all behaviors have a function. It's serving a purpose for your child, and we don't just yank it out and go, that is no longer necessary because we don't like it. The child is flapping for a reason. This is filling a need for them. And we can't just say stop because it's filling a need. So we have to fill the need some other way that doesn't prevent them. If what we're working as handwriting and they're hand flapping, they're not going to be able to work on handwriting. But that doesn't mean that we just go, well, I decided that handwriting was more important, so you don't get to hand flap. That's, first of all, not going to work. Second of all, it's not very kind. And it's not realistic, right? So going back to number one. So what we would do is figure out what this does for them and give it to them in another way. So maybe this is a kid that, likes the colors. When you do this, if you do it really fast, you see colors. So maybe we get a fan that they can hold in one hand while they're writing in the other hand, and the fan shows them colors. And now we're getting the handwriting in, and they're getting their need met. Those little handheld fan things. But if that's not what the need was, we want to make sure that we're filling the need. And you can't fill the need until you know what the need is, which is why you do the functional assessment. But it's a lot of times people do it all the time at schools. A parent will say to me, my child is doing this behavior at school, and I'll say, let's take a look at the behavior intervention plan, because a good behavior intervention plan is going to show me an antecedent strategy. It's going to define what the behavior is. It's going to tell me what we think the function of the behavior is. It's going to have a really good antecedent modification. It's going to have a really good scientifically proven effective consequence strategy that's not a punishment. Punishment doesn't work. They bury that headline all the time, but punishment strategies don't work. So consequence strategy should not be a punishment, right? And there should be a replacement behavior and a section about teaching skills that will help with this behavior. So for instance, if it's that the child starts spitting and we find out that 99% of this is escape, that they want to get out of doing something and so they spit, then we need to teach them a new skill that says, can I take a break? Because then they're not going to spit. So the skills BIP builder gives you all about that. And so I would encourage you to check out that if you do not have an ABA professional working in your life. Okay, my toddler is scared going into the elevator and when visiting friends' homes that he has never been to. Any suggestions? Thanks. So, yeah, I mean, we all have things that we're frightened of, right? And if you think about, I'm scared in an elevator, okay? Like to this day, I'm scared in an elevator, and I have lots of reasons to be scared in an elevator, right? But just the idea of an elevator, if you think about it, is craziness, right? My understanding of the world is that I'm here and my computer is here and, this is the world around me, right? But every once in a while, I go into a small room where the doors close and reality changes. Like, what is that about? That is what an elevator is. You go into a door, the doors close, and they don't stop. They'll hit you before they stop, right? And you like, there's a feeling, but you can't see anything, and then reality changes. It's like a magic trick. And if he's ever seen a magic trick where somebody goes into a box and disappears, he might think he's disappearing, right? It's like in his unwritten world, it's like, what in the hey nani nani is this? So one of the things that you can do for him is help him to understand what an elevator is and what it does. There are games that you can play, video games, where it shows an elevator and it shows like the side view of the building, and they're cartoon, right? And the character gets on the elevator and you can see, it's as if they've cut the building in half, and you can see the elevator going up and the doors open and it's on a different floor, but you can see the floor below it. Might be interesting to see, just if you show your child that on an app, if they're like, wait a second, what? What is that? That is like, so like, I had no idea. Oh, that's what that thing is. Or you might take them to a big fancy hotel that has the glass so that you can see the elevator go up. That's, one thing, but it could also be that the motion of the elevator makes him sick, that there's a feeling like his stomach goes down, right? I know people who love that sensation. And I know people who hate that sensation. It's just a personal thing. But what you want to do is pair being in an elevator with positive things. So, he's got a favorite lollipop. We get in the glass elevator and we get out the favorite lollipop. That might be enough. And we do that over and over and over again. So we pair a favorite lollipop with the elevator, right? That might be enough. Although, you want to be careful because if he might be more terrified of the glass elevator. So don't push it. Excuse me. If, what you could do is take him and just sit in the lobby of the hotel and watch the elevators going up and coming down for a half an hour with the lollipop. Or you can show him a movie of the elevators going up and down while he's got a lollipop, right? You go to the first thing where they're not having any anxiety, and then you slowly move yourself along. But just remember that the concept of an elevator, whoa, and, for whatever reason, he's not somebody who loves going to things that are new. And that's a lot of people, right? But we can shore him up by giving him a treat after going to something new. And you can start with things very short. Like maybe we just go to the friend's house and we walk up the front stairs and we wave. And then we leave and we get a treat, right? Yes, and you language it for them and go, wasn't that fun? We went on an adventure. You're so brave. You're so fabulous. And now you get this big treat because you were so brave. You can even get him like an explorer, like one of those sashes or something. Watch the movie Up with them and go, look, that child in the movie, they're an explorer. Do you want to be an explorer too? Okay, today we're just going to explore in the backyard. And then tomorrow we're going to go exploring. But you keep pairing it with positive things, and rewarding them and building their self-esteem and going, you're doing great. But you go as slow as you can without provoking the big anxiety. If you do have the big anxiety, or you end up having to go someplace and the big anxiety comes, then, you want to be very loving and gentle and, provide, I used to take a bag of toys with me wherever we went, so that if I needed something to distract him, I had these little wind-up toys, and he loved little music boxes, little wind-up music boxes. And I would change out the toys, and eventually I just would bring a bag of Legos. But we had these Easter eggs that had putty in them, that he could play with and manipulate. They were a sensory thing. And again, eventually I brought his Nintendo NES, and I could take that with us anywhere. And if he was ratcheting up with anxiety, I could be like, hey, I know, let's play NES. Let's do that. Right. So that we don't just, I think the thing that we most want to be careful about is we don't just say to them, suck it up. But we give them strategies to get themselves leveled back, because remember, they don't have the knowledge that we have of, I'm feeling anxious right now, but I'm going to be okay. This has happened to me 1,000 times, and I felt this way 1,000 times, but I'm going to be okay. He doesn't have that. So we want to give that to him. We want to be language saying, yes, I know, just like we were saying about, yes, I'm sad, the TV is off. We want to say, yes, I know you're feeling anxious, but you're okay. I'm right here and you're okay. Hey, should we play Nintendo? Do you want your fidget spinner? Or do you want to sit here and mom will sit with you and we can just sit on the side? Or should we go sit outside, right? Give them choices, not that many in a row, right? But give them choices. Tell them, I'm right here. You're feeling whatever the feeling, label it. But you're okay. And then reward them for getting through it. But I'm not a big fan for when we do systematic desensitization, and you can read all about that online. Systematic desensitization is about taking whatever the fear thing is and presenting it in a very small way and then gradually increasing the exposure to it. So again, maybe showing a picture of an elevator on a video game, and then eventually going to the hotel, sitting in the lobby, eventually, getting on the elevator and going one floor, eventually going more floors, but over a period of time, right? That's systematic desensitization. And then there's another thing called flooding. I'm not a fan of flooding, especially not with kids, especially not with kids on the spectrum. Flooding is where you basically put somebody in a So if somebody's afraid of snakes, you put them in a room full of snakes and let them have their feelings. I'm not a fan of that. But there are times when your kid will be someplace where they're going to feel flooded anyway, and you did it unintentionally. It's just really important to be compassionate when they're feeling that way and to give them support, and verbal support of saying, I've got you, I'm right here with you, it's okay, we can work on breathing strategies. We do touch points where, they can massage their own hands or feet. We taught our son to squeeze his own elbows because he would want a hug, right? And when he went to school, he couldn't be asking everybody for hugs anymore once we were in first grade. And so we taught him how to squeeze his own elbow and that it feels like somebody's giving you a hug. And that, people stand and do this all the time, and they're allowed to do that. So that's a lot of different things. But of course, I would tell you, be talking to your team. I always encourage all of you. I'm hoping that you have good, solid, a team of people around you that includes a team of ABA professionals, a supervisor, a BCBA who knows their stuff, and talk with them about strategies to help your child. But I'm not a fan of the flooding. If they start talking about flooding, I encourage you to say, no, let's systematically. It's so much kinder. I think it works better. And you really run, especially for a child who doesn't have full language capabilities, you really run the risk of traumatizing them. And I don't think any of us would ever want to do that, right? So going small and slow. Okay, somebody says their child is starting to throw small fits when they don't get their way. I'm getting better at dealing with this. Yeah, that's hard. But I also want you to recognize that that's a sign of real intelligence, that I'm throwing a fit when I don't get my way. That means that I understand that I'm more likely to get my way if I throw a fit, right? There's a whole thought process that involves a little bit of perspective taking, because I know if I make things uncomfortable for you, you're going to give me what I want. So recognize it for what it is, right? And then you just have to cut off the food supply for that kind of behavior. And then you make sure that you do not give in. So they throw the fit and you step over them and you go water the plants. You're not going away. You're not leaving the room. You're not, people say ignore. Be careful. Ignore the behavior, not the child. Right? Because a lot of people get confused about that. So I love the old America's Funniest Video where they show a neurotypical child who's 2, who's throwing a fit, and the mom is videotaping it with the camera. And I used to hate this. This used to be my least favorite video, because it used to be like nails in my head, because she's behind the camera and her kid is screaming and throwing himself on the floor, and she's behind the video camera laughing to herself, not directly at the kid, but she's like, oh, and then she moves behind a wall so that the child can't see her anymore. And the child stops crying, gets up, comes over to where they can see mom again, and then throws themselves on the floor and starts crying again. And mom is like, trying not to laugh, but laughing. And I remember watching that when my kid was little and would throw tantrums. Right. And I was like, who thinks this is funny? Like, who on earth would find this hilarious? And who has time to videotape when their child is throwing a tantrum? I wish more parents would not to put them on, Facebook and things like that, because your kids won't thank you later on. They're private things, but I wish more parents would videotape so that they could see the behavior for what it is. It's communication. And you can look at it later on and go, oh, notice this and notice that, right? And it gives you something to do so that you're not freaking out. So often our kids start to tantrum and we're like, oh no, they're tantruming again. And what do I need to do? I can't remember what I need to do. And this is going to be the rest of my life. And how are we going to ever have a life? How am I ever going to have free time? And now we're escalated up to here instead of looking at it and going, that's a tantrum. That means he wants something. What is it he thinks he wants right now? And whatever it is, I am not going to give it for this tantrum. But as soon as he stops tantruming, I'm going to put together a plan of how to teach him how to appropriately ask for it. Because I want him to have the thing that he wanted, right? And I want him in life to be able to ask for the thing, but I just don't want him to learn that throwing a tantrum is what gets it. That's really all it comes down to. And you don't leave the room for that. But you busy yourself with other things and, and let them have their tantrum. You'll see that they don't last as long. if it's a tantrum. If it's a meltdown, that's another thing entirely, and we'll have to save that for another day because we're out of time. But I so adore you guys. I'm so thrilled that we had a chance to be together today. Tomorrow on the show, we have our dear friend Temple Grandin. This is a recorded, one of our recorded interviews with her. But we welcome you to watch that. On Wednesday, we're back with Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet answering your questions. On Thursday, we have some folks from Skills and IBT who are going to be here with us, and that should be very fun. They'll take your questions. And on Friday, we have research on Friday. Some of the latest research, I had to think for a second, on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So it's a big week. Glad that you guys are here with us to finish out February 2021 strong. Hey, I'm going to see you live again on Wednesday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Stay tuned to watch this last little message that will play right after this bumper. We'll see you. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.